Welcome to the Brandon Cruz Daily Fantasy Podcast, coming at you with a twofer. I'm joined by Pierce today, Race for the Prize. You can find his stuff at Race for the Prize, and I wanted to talk about something that struck my interest earlier in January, and that was just the amount of chalk that busted last year, whether it was people starting on the pole, just flat out not showing up with the right setup, or something happening to them. So I dove in here. But Pierce, do you want to shout out anything people can look at you or find you at?
Just racefortheprize.com. That's where you can find all the information, and the spreadsheets are free. That's where they can go. When you talk about chalk, I mean, I obviously remember chalk busting because I'm not sitting on a pile of cash. So, because I typically play more of the popular drivers, so it had to happen plenty. But when I just think it's hard to remember because it probably happens so often that I can't just pinpoint one time. I know when I played somebody more than I should have, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they were chalk or that something really bad happened. I mean, the thing that's popped in my head is just recency bias, I guess, is I was pretty heavy on Harrison Burton in the Phoenix championship race, and he had a decent race. He was okay, but he wasn't the best JGR car. It was Brandon Jones again, so I missed on that one. That's just the first one that comes to mind. I don't think Harrison Burton was chalk by any means. Cindric and Allgaier were chalk, and they came through in that race. It was just you had to pick the next guy. I went Burton. It was Jones's day again.
Yeah, I did the same thing on that one. I'm primarily looking at the Cup Series because that's what everybody wants.
Okay.
You know, everybody wants the picks.
Right. No one wants to hear about
it. I mean, I'll talk to you about Xfinity and Truck. You know me, but I just figured.
You're right.
Yeah.
I apologize to the people listening. People know that I like the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series much better, but I do understand that the big payouts are in the Cup Series. So, all right, sorry for bothering people with that.
No, you're good. I'm gonna bother people with this, but I'm gonna try and take the tinfoil hat off. But I looked at the last 10 races of the season last year, and I focused primarily on the ovals. I didn't count Talladega. I didn't count the Roval or anything. So I looked at the championship race at Phoenix, Martinsville, Texas, Kansas, Las Vegas, Bristol, Richmond, and the Southern 500 as like the 8 races in the last 10 that I wanted to see how the chalk did. And I want to work backwards since the championship just happened. I think you would know more about that right off the top of your head. So outside of the fact, at least I think, outside of the fact that Elliott had an illegal car, I tried my hardest to figure out why he was so quick and why he was...
That was it. I mean, that's what I put in the spreadsheet. I was dead certain before it happened that you've got to play this guy. They are cheating, and you just played... NASCAR was not going to, they basically given themselves, they bailed themselves out. They could get away with him cheating, saying, hey, no, we already busted him, we already sent him to the back. And sending someone to the back in that package, in the low downforce package, is really not much of a penalty, especially if you've got an illegal car. So there's just no way they weren't cheating.
Yeah,
you had to play.
I was in that sheet with you. I even said before you typed in, I was like, that car isn't legal. He's going to win this race.
Yes. I mean, they needed him to win that championship. Like they have admitted, they've said before, it's show business. Well, if it's show business, then you need to have a star, and your star wins the championship. They got him in the championship. You knew he was going to win that race.
Yeah,
and he was good at that, and he had a good car in the spring race as well. He just had a loose tire. He led laps in stage 1, I think, if I remember correctly, and then he had a loose tire or as a penalty or something, shuffled him to the back, and that's what ruined his race.
And before that, even last year, the second to last round of the 2019 series, I mean, he was stupid fast there. He just blew a tire and got taken out of that race. So outside of that, like, we're on the same page that he cheated. NASCAR knew it and allowed it. But I mean, he was fast in traffic. He was up in the top 10, up right at the competition caution on lap 31. At the end of stage run, I mean, he was in the top 5. Talking about ownership, I remember Elliott being around right under 40, maybe 39, 38% in that. I know a lot of people jumped off of him because he was going to the rear, which I think is a big no-no in general. But certainly now, with
Yeah.
anytime someone's cheating, I think you should just stay on him regardless.
Yeah, I got burnt really bad by that with Martin Truex Jr. at Dover in 2019 when he and Bowman got sent to the back and they just rocketed to the front in no time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying that you necessarily need to go. I definitely believe that Chase Elliott situation was one where you want to go over the field. Most of the time, it's probably not the case, but maybe there are times where you can completely fade someone, like Kyle Busch. Probably right now, if Kyle Busch gets sent to the back, then maybe I would completely fade him, just the way that he's been running. But the way that Chase Elliott was running, I don't see why you would fade him in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Um, a lot of the people who jumped off went on Logano, and Logano I think had the highest amount of ownership, and he led the laps up until Elliott got to the front, and then Elliott just took off with the race. So I would argue that if Elliott was up there, Logano wouldn't have worked. But that was pretty much all I saw of quote unquote chalk not working or people not being on the right driver per se for the championship race.
Yeah, and Logano won the race in the spring, so I mean, I don't think he necessarily was a bad play. The guy that disappointed me the most was Brad Keselowski, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, he isn't going to count as chalk not hitting, but he wasn't in the optimal lineup. But I thought Brad Keselowski would have a better run, but he had the issues. I can't remember specifically what it was during the race. I know he kind of rebounded from it, um, but I remember he might have had to pit an extra time. I think during stage 2. I'm not looking at the laps, but I think there was something they had to deal with. But still, uh, he he was kind of there at the end too. I remember him battling through, uh, but he just never could quite get there. I thought he would be great based on the New Hampshire race where he won at New Hampshire and felt like that setup was really going to carry over. He still did earn 23 and a half fast lap points. So that's pretty solid for not. I mean, he ran almost as many fast laps as Elliott and Logano and led almost no laps. So he had a fast car. It's just the brakes didn't go his way.
And I couldn't tell if that was self made or just race made. I know Letarte had said, and I typically don't listen to anybody outside of Letarte, but he was saying that they may have been complacent just because they had dominated with that car. They didn't want to mess with anything, whereas Elliott took a brand new chassis to that track. Same thing with Logano. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. It doesn't really matter going into this year. I think they're going to improve regardless, but I think that's maybe what cost Brad on that race.
So who else did I really like in this race besides? I know you really want to focus on kind of the lap leaders, but humor me and look at some of the other guys, maybe value that we went after. As I look down through the starting grid, there's not really any obvious plays that are well, actually, what I should do is look at where I had them ranked. All right. Tyler Reddick looks like he was ranked pretty high, and I don't think Tyler Reddick. Why was Tyler Reddick ranked high? Yeah, that's because he did run kind of well. Remember, he had those fast laps in the spring race. I don't know if you remember the spring race with Reddick, where he's actually coming alive, and then he's in the top 5 and blows a tire, hits the wall. Looked really good,
Mm-hmm.
and Reddick was starting 21st at $8,100. So I kind of like Tyler Reddick, and then where did he end up finishing? I don't think he did anything, obviously. Yeah.
What do you? I guess this is kind of devolving more into analyzing races. What do you think happened to Harvick? Do you think he just didn't care anymore?
Yes, a little bit of that. I mean, I'm sorry. Am I going too deep into this?
No, I mean this is perfect because I have rough notes to go off. We can make more episodes through this, but
I don't think he cared much, but I also think that they weren't bringing the fastest cars over, the last couple months. It seemed like maybe the field. I mean, when the COVID break ended, and we were looking at the teams that were really good at building these setups on the fly without practice, it was clearly Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin, and then there was everybody else. No one was even close to them. Rodney Childers and Chris Gapart, when it came to just guessing on a setup and having a driver be able to work with it. it looked like by the time we got to Phoenix, other teams had gotten a lot better at making these guesses. And I think that's it, really. They just didn't have the car. I wish I had better notes from this. This is the one race probably where I don't have any notes because it's end of the season. And when this thing was over, I was,
You're like,
getting
thank
gulped
God
up. I
it's
didn't even
over.
talk about it.
It's
Yeah.
like, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's what I think. What's your thoughts on it?
I think it's the same thing. I mean, they were off pace compared to Kevin Harvick standards, and I don't like to use, the Harvick line per se at Atlanta or here at Phoenix, but that car obviously was not up to speed and was not up to what they normally bring to Phoenix.
Well, they didn't close the season out very well. They didn't finish well at Martinsville. I can't remember. I think they just had a bad setup before he got some damage. He might have got damage in that race. Yeah, I don't know.
I
They just did not close the season out very well.
Well, let's move on to Martinsville because we can kind of talk about that. I'll give some of the summary that I have here. So, Martinsville, Brad was chalk starting on the pole with Truex on his outside, and then right off the bat, Brad is way too tight. Martin Truex Jr. Is just set up perfectly, and he's able to take advantage. He's able to pass Brad, and I couldn't tell if that was like I couldn't tell if people were on Brad because he had ran well at New Hampshire during the year. He had ran well at Bristol, even though they're not really comparable.
Well, they had great, and I think I mentioned this in the podcast before. When it came to that low downforce setup, high horsepower, Penske was the best all season long, and we saw it at flat tracks. We saw it even at the higher bank track at Bristol. They just had a better understanding of how to make those cars go fast. Logano was great in the first Martinsville race. Keselowski was decent in that first Martinsville race, given the fact that he went a lap down at one point in that race and was able to battle himself back. And he ended up with 12 fast lap points. Not the greatest day, but he finished third. And that's after, going a lap down and struggling with the setup. You would have thought that, after the New Hampshire success, they would be in a better position. But as you mentioned, I think they just missed the setup there. Or it's just a matter of Martin Truex Jr. is a god at Martinsville now. He is unbelievable.
And also Brad he dominated Richmond. I mean, he looked stupid fast at Richmond. And my summary on Martinsville was just, I think Brad just arrived with the wrong setup on the restart. On the initial start, you can just see that his car isn't turning nearly as well as Truex Jr. And at Martinsville, as soon as you get that lead and they go green for a long time, you're going to rack up those fast laps. So I think the chalk busting there, Brad busting there, was he just arrived with an off setup. I'm sure if they had practice, he wouldn't have been that poor on the start, but obviously we don't have practice to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, you look, Blaney had the third most fast lap points. Logano is up there as well. Clearly, Penske had pretty good cars. They just didn't lead the laps. And like you said, once the guy gets out front, it's not easy to catch them or run them down, especially if they're in a pretty good car, which Truex was in, which Elliott was in. Elliott was, I've mentioned this before, once he gets hot, he is unstoppable. We've seen this plenty of times in his career. When he gets on a roll, get out of his way. And he was hot at the end of the season.
Well,
it may not even be as much of Keselowski. Maybe he's just off a little bit, and that little bit, when you have two cars that are hooked up, there's nothing you can do. Now, when I look going into that race, who did I like the best? I liked Logano, number one. Truex, number two. Chase Elliott was number three for me. Keselowski was number four. Blaney was number five. So those guys were all, I think my five were the top five in scoring. No. Elliott 1, Blaney 2, Truex 3, Logano 4, Keselowski was 6. So Almirola ends up sneaking in there because of place differential. I don't know, did any chalk really bust in that?
Well, it's not necessarily chalk busting, but let's use the Dominator word that we both don't like anymore. Everybody jumped on Keselowski as the Dominator. I think that's what I mean by chalk
Yeah,
busting, is
yeah.
like just
Yeah,
the
okay.
favorite Dominator not performing, which is what we saw this year. Maybe I guess I worded it wrong in the beginning. I'm not like saying value chalk, but the expected Dominators didn't show up last year.
See, that's why he was not my guy. My guy was Elliott and Truex were the guys that I was going after. So, I mean, I guess I got lucky there, but I don't know. My thought is, especially at any of these tracks where they really are tightly bunched, I have a hard time really going all in on one of these guys. I like to spread it out as much as I can, unless that, especially now, like in the past, you could look at practice and you had a little bit more data that could tell you that, oh, this guy is going to run away with this race. It's hard to do that. It's like even, I guess I did it at Phoenix with Elliott, but that was probably stupid in hindsight to go on this narrative, which is always a terrible idea. But boy, I was just so confident that NASCAR was going to cheat for him. But typically, I don't like to do it because just anything can happen in these races, or the way the sequencing happens or the pitting happens. I don't know. It's actually kind of strange to see that just two guys had these massive scores. A lot of times you'll see three or four guys with really big point totals at a race like Martinsville,
Mm-hmm.
and really only had two in this race.
Yeah, like, and I guess if you went with that strategy of playing a lot of people, obviously you would have clicked on the lap leaders, but you also would have missed a lot too. At least for this Martinsville, if you expected, three Dominators, you would have been, you most likely wouldn't have picked the right ones, especially if you were heavy like the field was with Keselowski.
Yeah, I mean, if you had, so I guess it just comes down to the strategy. If you're trying to pick like two hogs or three, you should have just picked what, two?
Mm-hmm.
Because Truex doesn't end up in the optimal lineup because he loses 20 place differential points. I can't remember what happened to him. Why did I have to look that up? What set him back in that race? But yeah, it was just really just really strange.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but anyway, typically if you get three of these hogs or dominators, then you want four guys in that pool, five guys in that pool. If Kozlowski's in that pool, then that's going to kill a lot of lineups.
Mm-hmm.
And then if there's only two, and I don't know, maybe this could be a theme moving forward in this package, but I don't know.
Yeah, I just I can't really answer these types of questions without seeing more of the cars. Like I don't know if this is the teams, if this is how everybody's racing right now. Let's move to Texas, which was, I mean, you could
Well,
put a,
one thing I do want to say about that is these aren't surprising names, though. When we
oh
look at the
no,
guys
no.
that scored the most amount of points, I would imagine most people that played were close. And I mean, when I look at the optimal lineup, probably the thing that hurt you was Matt Kenseth squeezes in with 17 place differential points. He finishes 14th, but his running position was 22nd. So like, even if you nailed some of these guys at the top, Matt Kenseth at 7,500, and I guess he was starting 31st, but um, let me see. Was he even on my board? Let me look. Where was Matt Kenseth ranking for me? Matt Kenseth was ranking. Yeah, no, he's nowhere to be found. Where the hell is? Where is he? I'm sorry. Hold on a second.
It had
No,
to
he
be,
was.
it had to
I
be
had
that.
him at.
Oh, go ahead.
I,
I was gonna say it had to be that late race caution that helped Elliott win the race.
yeah. I had him projected to finish 25th. That's pretty brutal on my point. That's pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty low, but so yeah, he was nowhere near my board. That's a rough projection for Matt Kenseth. What had he been doing that I
Well, that's when
buried
he
him
was
that
wrecking
low?
every week. Like he wrecked and finished multiple laps down the last half of the year.
I mean, I know he was terrible in that 42 car, but 25 is That's a pretty bold move, Eric Cotton. I don't know. What was I thinking? Clearly, it didn't work. Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. He finished, what, 34th at the Roval, 40th at Kansas, 39th at Texas. But, those aren't short tracks. So they're completely different tracks. I think that's an overreaction on my part. I was being way too hard on him because you take out those races. He finished 14th at Darlington, 16th at Richmond, 14th at Bristol, 18th at Las Vegas, 16th at Talladega. That doesn't matter. And then he finishes fourth. Yeah, that's just a miss on my part. He would have been. That's just complete recency bias is all that was. Even if I would have been smart, I still don't think I would have played him at 7,500. But whatever. All right, Texas.
All right, so let's move on to Texas. This is the one that was surrounded by mist and rain. I'll give the quick rundown for the beginning of the race for people that don't remember. Harvick started on pole. He was able to pull away a few car lengths on the second place, and the caution comes out. We got Chris Buescher into the wall out of turn 2. And then the race gets restarted in the rain. Like, this is not mist. I know everybody's like, oh, it's misty. But
I vaguely remember this, and I remember just being, and I think I turned it off because what is going on? What are you doing? You don't rate, and they wreck, don't they?
So they wreck a second time after they go green. JJ Yaley wrecks out of turn 2 because of the rain. Like, I know it's because of the rain, but NASCAR is too stubborn. They don't want to run it the next day. They're trying to get in. And so on the next restart, so we're 3 restarts in, Harvick has the fast car. I mean, he's pulling away from the field. He enters turn 2. He gets a bit high and he hits the wall.
That's right.
And so I was heavily on Harvick, and I'm pretty sure I threw something against my computer. Like, I quit because then the caution comes out and we go to.
Spend the whole time thinking like he's gonna be all right. He's gonna get the car. There's a lot of time left in this race. They'll get it never happens.
Yeah. Oh, they're gonna race on Monday. Oh wait, no, it's Wednesday. So they keep pushing the race back, and so for like a couple days, I'm just there, pissed at myself.
Oh, that's right. This thing got delayed days, didn't it?
And so we're like midweek with Harvick, like a lap down or whatever, repairing the car. Right. And so what happened here? The summary for the chalk was rain, NASCAR, bad luck. We raced into the week. I mean, Harvick, he had the fastest car and just put it in the wall.
That was it. Didn't Hamlin get into the wall too a little bit?
Yeah. When after the race restarted, but I was focused on Harvick because that's where everybody was. I know I was there. I'm pretty sure you were there. I'm pretty sure all the other sites were because it was Harvick at 1.5 miles where he's dominated all year, and he just he hit the wall, and there goes all those lineups.
I'm pulling up the sheet now. I guarantee I had him as my number 1 ranked driver, and yes, I did.
Yeah,
I had him number 1. And I think Hamlin was up there. He's number 4, but I remember him getting into the wall too. Yeah, that sucked. I mean, you look at this race and you see all these different fast laps. We've seen this kind of at Texas before, where the fast laps have been spread around in this package, but not always, because we've also seen it be a little bit more. Let me look. Was there a spring Texas race?
There should be.
I'm blanking. I don't remember.
Pretty sure there was.
Yeah, there was. It wasn't spring. It was summer Texas, right? Yeah.
Oh, yes. It was in June or July. It was the one Austin Dillon won.
Yeah, and that race, the fast laps were not spread around. And I look at last year in the fall, and they kind of were spread around, I believe, in the spring of last year. So in this package, we do see the fast laps spread throughout the field. But then again, that's because they're lap leading a lot. I don't know. It's a weird track now with this package. And we see a lot of weird stuff happen. I still remember a couple years ago where, I mean, everyone remembers this, where it was almost like ice once you got outside of the groove and turned the thing into a wreck fest. Texas is strange. So, yeah, I think it's just that craziness at the beginning. It almost makes reviewing the chalk kind of a moot point. There's you're not going to learn anything.
Well, I mean, that's where you can.
Right there.
I was going to say that's where you can learn, because let's look at the championship. Necessarily, chalk didn't really bust at Phoenix, Martinsville. If Brad was the chalk, which I think he was, they just arrived with an off setup. You didn't get the laps led. At Texas, Harvick, obviously the chalk play, had a lot of bad luck go his way.
Yeah, I don't know if Texas is just a weird animal. I don't even know if I want to talk about it because I feel like it might just
Mhm.
spin me in a different direction when I look at these other intermediate tracks.
All right. Well, moving back, I looked at Kansas. Nothing really wild happened at Kansas. We had a lot of lap leaders. I can't, like, this is one I don't really want to talk about a whole lot because we didn't necessarily see chalk not work. It was a race that we
Yeah.
expected to see, 3 to 4 lap leaders, and that's exactly what we saw. So, not really to say there. The other race that I looked at was Las Vegas. We had Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch starting on the front row. I'm going to guess that Harvick was the chalk there on the initial restart. Chase pushes Harvick past Kyle and then just kind of shoves Harvick out of the groove right out of that corner. And so the people who started first and second would cross the line on lap 2, third, and fifth with Logano in second and first. And then so you would see Elliott leading that race. You would see Hamlin leading that race. And then we had a caution with 7 to go. So if Harvick was the chalk there, or if people were playing Kyle Busch, I mean, they got shoved out of the way right off the bat, and you didn't see them lead the amount of laps that a lot of people projected them leading.
Well, so I'm looking at mine, and I got Harvick as my fourth projected driver, and I have Elliott by far as the number one dude. And Elliott, yeah, he number two really. I mean, he's right there almost with as much as Denny Hamlin when it comes. Now he didn't get the finish he needed, but
Mm-hmm.
fast laps and laps led, so I got that right. But at the beginning of these races are, as I've rewatched, what did I watch recently? It was Homestead and maybe another intermediate track. It's you just got to get a push. You see people in the non-preferred groove starting second, and if they just get a good shove, then all bets are off. Or if the guy starting in the bottom, the guy in the second row decides he's going to dive down and take it 3 wide, then boom, all of a sudden the guys up top just fly by, and he's it's just it's not like it was like it's not like in the old package where if you are setting up for the green flag, you can just peace out and drive away from everybody. You have to get a push. So that really screws up these lineups.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy to lead laps and run away at these races anymore.
I know throughout last year when it was happening, we would say, oh, these races are decided on pit road. The lap leaders are decided on pit road. But that's really what the races are coming down to right now. You're being pushed, like you just said, you're being pushed past people. Your crew chief is either making great plays or idiotic choices in pit road. And I'm trying to think of the more casual fan approaching DFS here. When when you start making a lineup, typically up until last year, you would always start the pole sitter because you would just assume that, oh, this guy qualified first, he must be the fastest car, or he has to be one of the fastest cars.
Well, and
Whereas,
you also had a data point of practice laps almost always correlated with that.
Mhm.
Right, because if the practice laps weren't good, then you typically didn't play the lap leader or the pole sitter. You didn't know. I mean, sometimes you would, but usually those two numbers would line up, and so it looked pretty good. And you had something to kind of lean on. Now the pole set by a random draw, or well, it's set by winning the race before, so it's just really doesn't tell you anything. And then even if it did, it comes down to this push that you get. You can easily lose the lead like nothing,
Mhm.
especially if your setup's not good, which can happen because you have practice.
And if that's the case, say if you arrive to the track and your setup isn't good, not only do you have to make wholesale changes in the race, if you have that driver roster and they're just off pace and you expected them to lead, I mean that lineup is just done right out of the gate. It's
Yeah.
DOA.
I mean, you're hoping and praying that somehow the guy gets back into a position where he's going to get laps in stage three, but it just never seems to happen now. Like
Mhm.
if you miss, doesn't mean the driver can rebound and have a decent race, but if you miss on the setup, the DFS wise, it's toast. It's
Yeah.
over.
So the general summary for Vegas, I just put poor start by the front row. So if you had them, that's how that went. The pit road picks the leaders, and then you had race shenanigans with a caution with 7 to go late in that race. Looking at Bristol, I was very high on Keselowski entering this race. He started first, Logano started second. Most lineups revolved around these two drivers in a lineup. Brad was chalk of how well he did in the Bristol race earlier in the season, and Brad led up until an early caution. He started third after that restart, and then he took the lead a few laps into the run. Brad was fast. I mean, he had the fastest car, and then he had a mechanical failure, and he went to the garage. Because of this, Harvick would then, come through the field and take the lead entering stage 3 and pretty much lead the rest of the race. That's how he led over those, 226 laps. That mainly came in the second half of the race.
So, and we've got Kyle Busch having another good race at Bristol. That's not a surprise. Given 500 laps, he has more than enough time to get the car dialed in. Typically it's at some of these intermediate tracks, you're running fewer laps. It's not as easy. For whatever reason, Busch and Stevens could get it dialed in, so I'm not surprised by that. Who else gets into the optimal place differential, guys? Yeah.
And so
Elliott has a pretty good day. Yeah, I mean, who did I like in this race? I don't remember this one at all. I liked Blaney. I liked Elliott. They were not big factors. Elliott scored the 5th most points, but that doesn't get it done. Blaney, 11th most. Who else did I like? There was a big swing and miss on my part in that one.
Same thing on my part, too. I think that was just a combination of Brad, like I said, a guy that I liked. He had a motor issue, take him out of the lead. And then the main Dominator ended up just being the guy who could lead late in stage 3, where you don't have to deal with stages, and unless a caution comes out, he should have the track position to stay up there.
Yeah. I don't know why I didn't like Kevin Harvick that much. Why? Hard to remember. Not just remembering the race and what happens in the race, but then to remember everything that you were thinking going into there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I've got notes. This one, I don't seem to have too many notes going into this.
Yeah.
I do have a note that says Kyle Busch is in the Skittles car again, so should have played him. Gotta play Kyle Busch in that damn Skittles car every time.
Do you think what is the one that Truex runs? Is it Auto Owners?
I think so. Who's the guy that tweets that out? It's is that Maccabee that tweeted that out?
I think so. But he didn't do as well this year in that car.
He didn't though, yeah. But it was Auto Owners. It's like a gray 70, not 70.
It's the blue one.
Yeah. He still runs that for the 19?
Yeah, he had it a few times last year.
Something I completely forgot was that until Phil tweeted this out was Eric Jones ran for Furniture Row a year. I completely had forgotten that. I don't even know what number that car was. What?
Oh, the 77. Yes, I totally forgot.
I can't even remember that year. I don't even know what year that was. Was that Truex's change? Was that the last year for that team, or did they run another year? I think they ran another year after that. I don't know.
I think it was the year before he closed down the team.
I can't even. It's weird. Now Jones is with Richard Petty. God help him.
Yeah, after this, we got to just shoot the breeze with the random things that we've seen, just so we're not. Never mind. Looking at Richmond, all the top 3 starters all led over 40 laps. That's Harvick, Logano, Austin, Dillon. Brad would drive through the top 10 and lead the latter half of the race here at Richmond. This was when, obviously we're going back in time because we started with the championship race. We're going back towards the season, but this is the first race that the whole Austin Dillon craze really went went rampant following this race.
Yeah.
I know I was a bit high on Austin Dillon after this at the short, especially at Martinsville, because I was like, oh
Yeah,
well,
this was
yeah,
definitely, I've got no, I don't know if I wrote this down, but when I look at it, I just feel like I was late to the party and that I missed this. And once you see this Richmond race, and then you look at the races before and you look at some of the notes, and like, oh, how did I miss that? Clearly, they're building some really fast race cars. What was, I mean, a lot of that's just 100% bias towards Austin Dillon.
mm-hmm.
That's definitely, I think that's what I would chalk this up to, of always giving the Dillon kids too much flack and being tough on them. And one of the problems is that when they actually have good cars, I just missed it. And so I definitely was kicking myself. But again, hindsight's 2020. I can look back and say, well, of course he's running well, but it's so hard to just think that, yeah, Austin Dillon's really running really. Where was he starting in this race? Third?
Yeah, he started third.
Even now, looking back, it's still hard to tell myself, yeah, you got to play Austin Dillon. What are you talking about? Austin Dillon starting third? I'm playing Austin Dillon.
Uh-huh.
What's he going to do? Lead laps? Yeah, I guess he did lead some laps. So, and he did have, even knowing that he scored the second most points, it's hard to tell myself. Austin Dillon in a fast car, who cares? He's still Austin Dillon, and he's still competing against better drivers that are often in better cars who make fewer mistakes. But, you know, on this day, it happened and it worked out. But he wasn't, like, we've been going backwards, and I don't remember seeing him on any of the optimal lineups that we just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. And
not at Bristol,
mm-hmm.
Not at Vegas, not in the Roval, not in Kansas, not in Texas, not at Martinsville, and not at Phoenix. So, yeah, that's what really stings. Like, oh, yeah, Austin Dillon's running well. Okay, got to keep playing him now.
Yeah.
And then he does nothing.
Which is what I did.
Uh-huh. We think we're riding the wave, and you got to be on it before it crests. And everyone jumps on the wave, and, well, now it's going down. So, got to be early to the party, and I was definitely not early. So yeah, I'm sure that I don't even want to look at my projections. The falling races for Austin Dillon was probably way too high. Freaking Austin Dillon.
Especially if you crucified Matt Kenseth following his races.
Yeah. But yeah, so if I killed Matt Kenseth for 3 bad races at a totally unrelated track, then I guarantee I was, praising Austin Dillon for the next couple weeks. So hopefully I didn't for my Roval projection, but whatever. I'm not going to sit here and completely beat myself up. Anyway, Brett Keselowski ran well. As we mentioned before, Penske has good setups. Logano scored the 4th most points. Penske had pretty solid setups. Harvick had a good day there too, which really should have given him more. He ran well here. Why did I not give him anything at Bristol? I don't know what I was thinking. I just don't get it. Well, I got to find, there's got to be some sort of note or something that swayed me away from Harvick at Bristol. It's got to be. Yeah. Anyone else at Richmond? I think Elliott maybe is a little bit of a disappointment. Where did I have Elliott?
Yeah, Elliott led 2 laps.
Well, no, I guess I didn't. I had Truex and Harvick, Keselowski, Logano, Bell as my top 5 drivers, point per dollar wise. And so I look at it. Truex, 5th most points. That's disappointing. He's starting 14th. He had a little place differential. He had been really good at this racetrack. But he's awesome here. I know he won in the spring. Did he win in the fall? Yeah, he'd won the last 2 races. Finished 3rd in the 2018 fall race. I believe that's just because it was a late race shootout with Kyle Larson. He was running away with that race. So that would be chalk busting to me. And I can't explain that. What happened to Truex in this race?
I'd have to look back because I don't have any notes on him.
Can't remember every one of these races. Well, actually, here we go. What the drivers say. Richmond. Usually we'll pull it up.
This morning I was going through some of these races to try and trying to remember what happened. Even at 4x, it's hard to pay attention because they only show the top two guys.
Yeah, it is. So here we go. Truex, he finished second in this race, so he just didn't get any. Really was pretty surprised that we ran as good as we did with the way the car felt. It really wasn't doing anything that I wanted it to do or that we've done here in the past when we've been good. Just a battle all night, fought hard, guys did a great job with adjustments, pit stops, all that, just execute, keep us up front, good solid night. So it just didn't have a very good car.
Mm-hmm.
Which sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's when they don't get to practice, these things can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this was a Cole Pern thing. We've seen Trex do well at most of the tracks, but maybe Richmond was a Cole Pern setup, and him not being there hurt him.
I didn't even think of that. I always looked at Richmond as a Truex track, not necessarily a Cole track. I mean, that could be it. I didn't even think about that.
But well, I mean, he still finished second, so he did muscle his car up there. I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head of what it could possibly be. They just didn't get the setup right, so
All right. Well, let's go and look at the last race I want to focus on because I don't want to look at the whole year because people who, however you run in March, it does not determine how you run in November. And so the last race that I looked at for this was the Darlington race, the Southern 500. Chase Elliott started first, led 114 laps. Truex started sixth, led 196. And then Chase and Truex are racing with less than 20 to go right after green flag pit stops. I'm so happy. I got both these guys. I expected them to do well. And then Truex does a slide job. He clears himself, puts the two in the wall, or puts himself and Chase in the wall. Truex loses a tire. Elliott has a ton of damage. Harvick passes Elliott as he drops, and he wins. Austin Dillon lucks his way into a second place finish due to his pit stop. I mean, my summary here is just idiots, just a bunch of idiots. That's why the main lap leaders didn't finish well.
Yeah, well, Elliott's not in the optimal lineup despite almost or over 50 hog points. Truex he does squeeze in it, but he loses 16 place differential points. But yeah, it was just Truex, wasn't clear, and Elliott just wasn't, and Elliott didn't need to drive through him. But that's, Elliott he won, a handful of races, but there's a little bit of Kyle Busch in him at times. And I think one of the earlier signs of that was the Bristol 1 race where he just takes Logano out.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing was a crazy mess at the end. And then, a week later, Logano screws him right back at Homestead by blocking him twice. And Hamlin goes on to win that race. That race is a lot closer than people remember. Elliott probably could have won that race if Logano, who's 2 laps down, doesn't block Elliott, who's the leader, that gives the lead to Hamlin. So there's a lot of shenanigans that happened. And this Darlington race was yet another example of Elliott was going to get passed eventually by Truex. Truex was much faster. Elliott could not hold on. And Elliott, I think on the play-by-play of the radio said, well, I was trying a different line. And he did. He tried to do something different. It cost him a ton of time. It opened the door for Truex. And Truex just decided, I'm going to go ahead and take this spot now. And Elliott still thought he had a chance, and they wrecked each other. And so that completely changes the optimal lineup, because if it's Truex and Elliott, both those guys are pretty expensive. And so you have to pay up for both those guys. Harvick's not in the optimal lineup at all at that point. And then that's going to shift, the bottom half of your lineup down to some cheaper options. But with Elliott not making it in, you then are able to go with Newman, Priest, and Kenseth. I believe this is Ryan Newman's only optimal lineup appearance of the entire season. The only race. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and I know it's a bit, can't think of the word right now. obviously everybody knows the optimal lineup switches every single lap. That's why your lineups hop up and down the leaderboard.
Don't
But I mean, last year it was just lineups who were great during the whole race just fell apart
Well,
within like the last.
but you got the other side of that too, though. At that Fontana race, where Ryan Blaney is destroying the field and then he cords a tire.
Oh yeah, and I'm not complaining. I'm explaining of how
Yeah,
much randomness was
you
in this
can't
season.
look.
Well, I mean, look at you at Talladega, same thing. Pure luck. I mean, luck came
Well,
into
come on, that's Talladega.
luck. But
You
still,
can't
I
look at
mean,
those. Even when it's over, if you look at the 2009, like, was it 2019 where they soldered to the back? Remember, they claimed that I think he shoved someone below the line, I believe is what happened.
oh yeah, he
So Spencer
blocked.
Porter
Yeah,
wins the race.
yeah,
You can't even look after the race
yeah,
with most of these things. It's so crazy. But I mean, it's exciting and it makes it fun, but it is heartbreaking.
yeah.
But I mean, I think the better takeaway though is at least in NASCAR, the payouts are a lot lower. When you see some of these guys in the NFL lose $1 million because of just really random weird stuff, that's brutal.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll certainly start raising a lot of noise if the payouts for NASCAR get extremely top heavy. Like I will certainly be the first one to, start making noise about that.
What's it gonna do? They're not gonna change. They know what they're
It
doing.
makes me feel better.
Look, they're not listening. And I don't think that they're inconsiderate. It's just they've got business experts. They look at the numbers, they look at the data, and they know what works and what doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, then they'll shift it back around. And we've seen other sites fail that decide to distribute the money differently.
Mhm.
Clearly, what people want is to chase the elusive dream, and these top heavy lottos are what the people want for whatever reason.
Well, okay. Well, before we end this episode, what do you think Daytona, the first position? I think it's 150 because I think the entry is 12, from what I'm
I'm
seeing from
old off
tickets.
this. I mean, I was a person who said that they were going to have a $1 million payout years ago. That never happened. How high did we get though last year? Didn't we get pretty high
I think
early in the
I
season?
think we got 150 when COVID came back, or when they came back from COVID.
It's never going to be bigger than that. Those Darlington races where I mean, there was nothing else going on in the entire world, and we still couldn't get above 150. But we did get they had $100,000 iRacing events, which was insane. Um, I'm 100, 150. I don't think it'll get much higher than that because you've got all those sports are going to be back. So, or well, NBA will be there. Who knows?
Which, if you're listening, everybody who's listening, that's why you play the Xfinity and Truck Series, because it's easier, or not easier. You still need to be good, but it's you're not
Well,
fighting as many people.
those all stayed above 10,000 last year, which
Hmm.
was pretty cool because typically the trend in the years before, we get to the end of the season and Xfinity and Truck Series are buried, and that's because there's so many other sports going on. But everything was going on this year. There was college football, there was NFL, there was Major League Baseball and NBA. Everything was going on, and they still had $10,000 truck races and $10,000 to $20,000 Xfinity races every single week. So that's cool, and I think we will continue to have that. I would imagine because definitely at the beginning of the season, we always get it at the
Mm.
beginning of the season. So and now too with the new schedule, like it, love it, or hate it makes it easier for people to play. If you don't have to watch practice, if you don't have to wait till the last minute to see qualifying, if you know that qualifying information earlier in the week, you can set your lineups on Thursday night and you don't even really have to change it. So I gotta think that it makes it so much easier to play the Xfinity and Truck Series now. Whereas if it was the past, you had to be kind of glued to the TV, and some people were watching college football or they were looking at other sports, and it made it really hard to get into those contests. So which, sometimes it makes you feel like, well, now it's going to be more competitive. But not if people are setting their lineups on Thursday and Friday. It's not really all that much competitive. So I don't think it's going to be any tougher. Hopefully it stays. I wonder if FanDuel is ever going to get involved. I guess not. I don't know. I mean, they were running fantasy contests for everything. I don't understand why FanDuel didn't try to open that up either.
I don't know. They got to put The Bachelor and stuff like that on there. So,
This is a pretty dark time. In March, man, you could see just degenerates wasting away. And God, I remember that the Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden debate was on like one of those pick'ems.
Yeah.
Like, what was wrong with us?
It was a dark time. It was a dark time. Good. Hopefully, that everyone says that's a once in a lifetime thing. So hopefully, I don't have to worry about that ever again. I always told everyone, man, at least I'm good. Sports will never end. I'm fine. I'll always have something going on. And then, 4 years into this happens.
Yeah, well, I think they've got a plan now for how to get sports.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anything that I can trust that we will be able to do better next time is get sports moving a lot faster. Everything's gotten pretty much up to speed, so hopefully we never have to. I mean, it was just boring. I cannot believe like the highlights of the week were watching iRaces on Sunday afternoon. I cannot believe that.
All right.
How much attention it got for a video game race. It was wild that nothing seemed real anymore.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it either. I couldn't believe that first that was happening, and then I was covering that with all my free time.
I know, I cannot believe it. And it was really weird to try to pretend to know what was going to happen, and then someone rage quits.
Yeah.
Or Corey LaJoy just doesn't start in the right place and he gets scored in the wrong. It
was so weird.
It was, man, probably worse than roulette, worse than a slot machine. I don't know. God, I was right. I was doing videos. I was not only just doing videos, they were having me do spots on DK Live talking about this races. It's really weird. It does not seem. I was glad to do it. It's fun, but it's, I hate sometimes having to pretend to know things that I don't know, and I hope people realize like he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Or it was so funny seeing the differences between how much money the drivers put into it. Like you had Timmy Hill on a G27 on a laptop, and then you have Jimmy Johnson and his. I guarantee you that his IndyCar sim rig is like $8,000.
Oh yeah.
So
if people are like, you can't race in that, you got to get in a regular car. That's going to mess everything up. Here's the other thing: like, how come none of us could put together that he's going to join IndyCar? That's why he's got this IndyCar setup. You idiots! I don't know why it didn't really dawn on anyone. Because he didn't make the IndyCar announcement until a while, did he?
No, it was. I think he had just said that, like in that February that, hey, this is my last year, and he hadn't mentioned what he was doing after that.
Well, I'm also kind of disappointed. He's not going to do the Indy 500. What the?
Okay,
don't do the road courses, but you kind of got to do that one too.
Don't get me started. I think he's scared. I think he's a baby. I'm not using any other words, but I think I don't think he has the guts to do it, which is idiotic.
He's seen some pretty horrific moments at that track, and so someone asked him that, he's like, if I'm ever scared, then I'm not gonna drive anymore. Or if I'm ever, you're scared, just admit it. I don't. And it's okay. Yeah. Like it's just weighing the risk reward. What's the reward? I mean, obviously, it'd be great to win the Indy 500, but he's won everything else, and he's got a family, so
yeah. But man, when that season's already like what 16 races, and you're gonna miss You're gonna miss Texas in the Indy race. You might as well just run for the championship.
Well, I can understand not wanting to run Texas. That thing can turn into. I mean, literally, and that's very dangerous when they start pack racing. And sometimes they try to fix that, but it seems like they always find a way to get together at Texas. I still want to go back to Fontana, but never will.
I was about to say that was the best race the last 15 years for the IndyCar series. And yeah, again, I mean, I know I'm coming across harsh, and I don't mean to. I mean, it is highly dangerous. But I mean, I would pay a outrageous amount of money to see that in person.
I would love to see them run more ovals. At least with some, like, I would like to see them in Charlotte. Why not?
Yeah, they're too scared.
Why can't they make that happen?
I think. Oh, they had Charlotte. They had fans get killed at Charlotte because they raced Indy cars there. I think it was Charlotte, or it was it was either that or another 1.5 mile, and some cars wrecked and a tire flew over the fence.
That'll usually do it.
And then obviously, Las Vegas and everything. So 1.5 miles are not as they don't want to go to those anymore.
Yeah. Well, they're excited to watch. So why don't they do Michigan? Is there something? Obviously, I'm out of the loop when it comes to Indy, so I don't know a lot of these things. But Michigan, is it just too dangerous there as well?
Yeah, it's too dangerous. It's all safety, which is.
I know they did an iRace there.
Yeah, they wrecked on the restart.
I don't know. I like that. That's what excites me about IndyCar is that, that's what's so exciting about the Indianapolis 500. It's pretty freaking dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
They're going really fast. Sometimes it can turn into a bit of a. It was really weird watching that race in August. It just didn't feel like. You got to have 100,000 people there or whatever it is. It's just not the same.
Yeah, hearing no sound other than the cars was eerie, to say the least.
It was. There was something weird about that. I hope they can have a regular Indy 500 this year. Same thing with the Kentucky Derby. That was another one that it was kind of okay.
Yeah.
You can't really see the crowd anyway, or at least the people in the infield from the cameras, but that was weird too. Gotta get people in the crowd.
We gotta get back to normal. That's just I just want to get back to normal. That's all I want to do.
Got news for you. I don't think anything's ever going to go back to normal.
Well, you can go ahead and find Pierce at Race for the Prize. I don't want to bore anyone else as we talk about IndyCar as NASCAR. You can find him at racefortheprize.com.
Especially since I know nothing about IndyCar, by the way. Make sure people know that. Like, I have no idea. I'm not pretending to know. I'm just a casual. What I am is, just a casual fan. So if I embarrassed myself with my lack of IndyCar knowledge or my pretending to know a thing about, I apologize. I know nothing. I think it's fun to watch sometimes, but I know more.
I don't. I only watch the ovals in IndyCar because I find the road courses extremely boring. But that's just me. But thank you guys.
I wish I could find a way to get into it.
If you think NASCAR is boring, IndyCar is something else. Thanks for listening, guys.